The page and Windows Media Player will play the sports talk you want to hear. Elevation5280sports.com. Careful. It's tough to breathe up here.
Step this way for the Spanish Inquisition. Just a little coffee talk, okay, like butter.
Matt's an okay dude, but he's a dummy.
Michael! Oh, that's funny. Michael!
And now, broadcasting live from the Elevation 5280 Sports Studios in Denver, Colorado, this is the Wheelhouse with Matt Mascarena and Michael Spillett.
I've said it 2 years ago. I'll say it again, man, that Will Barton can and will shoot you out of a game. That was the same criticism that I had of J.R. Smith when he was here, Matt. Yeah, he'll drain 5 3-pointers in a row, but then he'll miss 10 in a row. And you always say, a shooter needs to keep shooting. No, never believed in that sentiment, especially with guys like a J.R. Smith and a Will Barton, guys who will shoot you out of a game.
I agree 100% on this team being a pretender right now. And you mentioned it, Will Barton, there's no semblance of a rotation on this basketball team. There's no bench. The bench is awful. You can't have Mike Malone keeping Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray when he's on the court, when he's playing, or your starters playing 35, 40 plus minutes a game because you can't take a rest. You can't let your bench come in because they're going to give up double-digit leads. They're going to give up double-digit runs.
I'm going to invite Matt.
All work and no play makes Michael a dull boy.
Now, Matt and Michael are on.
And welcome into the Wheelhouse here, Elevation5280sports.com on this Sunday morning here we're in Denver, Colorado. Matt is out. Greg Johnson, friend of the station, filling in this morning. It says Groggy J, Greg, so I'm imagining
I misspelled it.
Early for you.
It's supposed to be Greggy J.
Well, it might make sense.
Morning is starting off well, man.
Well, I guess Groggy makes sense then. If you misspelled Greggy into Groggy, then it makes sense. I saw the Pooch. How's the Pooch doing?
She wants in on the show.
She has a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
So we have a lot to get to today. Obviously, the NFL draft happened over the weekend, and we'll dive into the NBA as well. Greg, you can see my attire as the local team here in Denver. Nuggets move into third place with a big win over the Clippers. Avs have won 2 in a row since Philip Grubauer. You're wearing the hoodie. Since Philip Grubauer returned. So we'll get into the local teams. We'll also look into the bigger picture around the NBA and the NHL as well. We'll even dive into a little bit of a Kentucky Derby, if you even realized that it was on yesterday. And also we will dive into some Major League Baseball as well. Starting off, though, as we had a 2-hour live draft show on Thursday, Greg, and Matt and I did the top 15 picks. As a little on a school night, it's a little late to go the whole first round. But we did the first 15 picks. Were there any, maybe besides the local pick here in Denver, Greg, at number 9, which I think shocked and frustrated a lot of people? What did you make of the first round of the draft? Were there any surprises? Did people, well, at least 2 quarterbacks fell out of the first round after a lot of people speculated all 5 were going to go in the first, maybe 10 picks, but anything surprise you? What did you make of it? And who do you think will have an immediate impact, maybe besides Trevor Lawrence and or Zach Wilson?
Yeah, Mike, I thought there were some surprises. I was surprised how low Mac Jones went down, and more so with Mac Jones, I like that fit in New England for him too. Obviously learning from a very legendary coach in Bill Belichick, as much as we don't really like him here in Denver. Obviously what he's the position he's in there in New England, he can come in, maybe learn from Cam Newton, and could definitely be a good future quarterback for that Patriot franchise. Obviously you still got Josh McDaniels over there, who's a good quarterbacks coach. So I thought that was probably one of the biggest steals of the first round, especially given Mac Jones was predicted to go third. with a lot of mock drafts with the 49ers. And that being said, I also think Trey Lance could have a really big impact right away with that already lethal offense. If you get the Niners healthy and you throw in Trey Lance there, I think you're looking at a potential Patrick Mahomes type of thing. When the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes, Alex Smith started for a year. Mahomes came in and engineered what was already a pretty high weaponed offensive attack, and they just needed like a quarterback that can really elevate them to the next level. So I think Trey Lance has that potential. I don't think he's going to start necessarily this year. I think Jimmy G might still be the starter, but I do like that pick with the Niners. As for the Broncos, yeah, it's surprising, but it's surprising that we did take a cornerback, as good as Surtain is. At the same time, I think the Broncos are doing that because I think they want a shot at Aaron Rodgers, and knowing that the Niners were one of the teams that were looking at possibly going after Rodgers. They got Trey Lance, so the Broncos are probably thinking to themselves, do they need a quarterback? If they are going to go after Aaron Rodgers, maybe they can trade Surtain. So I don't know if he's going to be a Bronco or not in the future.
Yeah, and the stuff after the post draft of Patrick Surtain, the second, Greg, it has introduced to the press, all these interviews and stuff like that. So you got to believe he may be in their future for, like you said, at least the next month. Because like I told Matt on Thursday and everyone else here around town, Greg, that unless this is part of a bigger plan, because then they go and draft another safety and another cornerback later in the draft. So you got to be kind of scratching your head in an already stacked defensive back room. I understand Kyle Fuller is on a 1-year deal, Kareem Jackson on a 1-year deal. They spend kind of big money on Ronald Darby, who, let's face it, Greg, hasn't had the best numbers over the last couple of years, can't stay on the field due to injuries. So you got to be wondering, like, why would they go and spend money on that if Patrick Surtain was going to be their pick, Greg? Because he probably would have been there at 9, but I guess George Payton didn't want to take any chances of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because there's definitely more of a risk, I think, sometimes to draft a quarterback than there is at other positions, because the quarterback position demands so much, obviously, right? Especially a rookie quarterback who has yet to prove themselves in the NFL. So with a guy like Surtain, he could come in and make an impact right away. You may not get the highest reward, but you're not taking the highest risk either. And in a pass-heavy league that the NFL is now, I mean, you can't have too many necessarily corners or safeties. So who knows, man? It'll be interesting. I do think overall the first round was definitely for the most part as predicted, outside of maybe Mac Jones falling. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had a feeling that if Mac Jones were to fall that late in the draft, Matt, that Bill Belichick was going to take him. You brought up Trey Lance going to San Francisco, and the 49ers made a huge deal in acquiring that number 3 pick from the Miami Dolphins maybe almost a month ago now that happened. And everyone's like, man, did they really mortgage their future for this future? And a lot of people tied Mac Jones to the 49ers. Greg, do you think that was a surprise that the 49ers went Trey Lance? A lot of people calling him a project. So you got to wonder, and we'll get into quarterbacks on short leases here in just a few minutes after the draft. But do you think that he'll have to sit behind a year? Because a lot of people thought that the Patriots were going to go back after Jimmy G. Now you draft Trey Lance, who again is a quote unquote project and maybe has to sit. Is Jimmy G really the best quarterback to sit behind if you are Trey Lance and if you are the future of that franchise?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do feel that Trey Lance is going to sit for sure. I don't know how long. Is it a whole year? That remains to be seen. Like I said before, I think it's something similar to what happened with Kansas City when Kansas City drafted Patrick Mahomes and they still had Alex Smith on the roster. I think Jimmy G is a professional enough that he could definitely help Trey Lance kind of learn the ropes and whatnot. But I think eventually the plan would be for Trey Lance to take over the starting job. But he definitely needs a lot more grooming, a lot more experience in the NFL film room, in the NFL locker room, in the practice field, because he's got the potential, like you said, Mike. I think Trey Lance has a bigger upside than Mac Jones, because when you're dealing with Mac Jones and Trey Lance, you're dealing with one quarterback that has talent, but it's kind of raw in Trey Lance. You have another quarterback who you know what you're getting with him. He's smart, he's steady, but is he really going to bring you to that next level? So I think the 49ers are hoping that the project of Trey Lance will turn into something like a Patrick Mahomes. Not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, but
No, I understand. And, and obviously Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 to Jacksonville. Zach Wilson, although his mom has gotten more press than he himself has up there in New York. Really quickly here, Zach Wilson, nobody really to sit behind up in New York. He is going to be the guy. They draft a couple offensive linemen to help him out. Were you surprised at the rise of Zach Wilson during at least the last month? This guy caught on fire to be one of these top quarterbacks taken, at least in the top 5 in this NFL draft. Were you surprised at how fast and how quick Zach Wilson's name rose up the quarterback draft board?
I was. It's crazy how some of these prospects, these quarterback prospects, or even whether it's quarterbacks, whether it's wide receivers, whatever, during the combine workouts, during more film that we see, that all of a sudden they become like a huge topic of discussion. So I was a little bit, but I'm not gonna lie, Mike, I feel bad for Zach Wilson. I mean, the Jets, it's like getting drafted. I don't know. I don't know what a good comparison is, to be honest with you, man. But it's like it is a dumpster fire out there in New York. I
was gonna say, you get rid of Adam Gase, so I don't know if that helps anything. Like I said, he's not sitting behind anyone. I couldn't even tell you, Greg, who.
When was the last time the Jets really had like a solidified starting quarterback for a long term?
Joe Namath.
Exactly. I mean,
Mark Sanchez led him to a couple AFC title games in a row.
But was it Mark Sanchez or was it that defense?
Well, you asked what quarterback was on the team, so I'm going with
quarterback that led. Well,
quarterbacks lead.
Chad Pennington, but he got injured.
You could argue that the defense led the Denver Broncos to the Super Bowl in 2015, but was it Peyton Manning's leadership that also helped them as well?
Yes.
I'm not saying Mark Sanchez is Peyton Manning by any stretch of the imagination, but Mark Sanchez was the quarterback of those teams. But that is a good question, Greg. Like I said, Joe Namath, I guess.
You had Chad Pennington. I think Chad Pennington had the potential. Vinny was decent. I mean, you also had Curtis Martin on that team, and Bill Parcells was the coach. So, what about your Bears, Mike? That was a surprising pick. Not surprising. It was surprising in the sense where they have so many quarterbacks on their roster already. Did they need to draft Justin Fields? Or did they look to trade?
I was going to say, that is a good question, Greg, and we will tackle that, pun intended, after our first time out, because I want to get into now starting veteran quarterbacks that have short leashes after quarterbacks were taken in the draft right here on the Wheelhouse Elevation 5280sports.com.
Interact with Elevation 5280 Sports on social media, like our Facebook page.
People want to go on the internet and check out their friends, so why not build a website that offers that?
Follow us on Twitter at 5280 Sports Radio.
What the heck is a Twitter?
Also, follow us on Twitch at Elevation 5280 Radio to watch the Stalking Dead live.
Little pig, let me in.
And as always, check us out online at elevation5280sports.com. Careful. It's tough to breathe up here.
Hey, Michael Michael Spillane here for the Flash Hauler Driving app, a convenient app for on-demand furniture moving, vehicle towing, and courier service. If you like being out on the road, not having people breathing down your neck, pressuring you to get stuff done by deadlines and time limits, join our fleet on the Flash Hauler Driving app. Earn money by driving your pickup or van. Be your own boss, making your own schedule, not to mention the feeling of helping truckless people getting their furniture moved to wherever they need. If vehicle towing is more in your arena, we provide that service as well. And if you don't have a truck or a van, no worries. The app enables you to do courier gigs. It's an easy process to sign up and get approved to be part of the Flash Hauler Hero team. Be proud of what you do while you do it at your convenience. So what are you waiting for? Grab your phone, download and install the Flash Hauler, that's FLASHOLR driver app, or visit our website, HOLR-apps.com. Getting it hauled in a flash.
Hey, Dad.
Yeah.
You remember that ball game we went to a couple years ago?
Sure.
And how you didn't have enough cash for 2 hot dogs, so you walked with me on your shoulders until we found an ATM? And then when we got back to our seats, we never saw the hot dog guy again.
Well, I don't remember all that.
Yeah, that was an awesome game.
You never know which moments will be the ones they'll remember forever. So take time to be a dad today. Learn more at 1-877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Elevation5280sports.com is more than just a streaming radio station.
Not y'all.
Rule the water cooler conversation by keeping up to date with scores and stats from your favorite team.
Shot. Score! Nathan McKinnon from the high slot on a perfect feed from Mikko Rantanen.
Get to know your favorite hosts. Access show lineups and past shows in the audio vault. And in-depth analysis from our sports experts and bloggers. Elevation5280sports.com. Careful. It's tough to breathe up here. This segment on Elevation 5280 Sports is brought to you by the Flash Hauler Driver app, helping people move in a flash.
And welcome back into the Wheelhouse here, Elevation5280sports.com. Greg Johnson filling in for Matt this morning. Michael Spillane with you here on this glorious Sunday morning, the Sunday after the NFL draft, Greg, and we kind of touched on a few of the quarterbacks that were taken. Patrick Surtain, a little bit of surprise move, but one other defensive guy was taken before him, and that was the son of Joe Horn, Greg, and a little bit, I don't know if that was a little bit of a surprising move, as most of the top, quote-unquote, again, draft experts even had Patrick Surtain as the best defensive player. Were you surprised at Carolina at number 8 to pick Horn at a cornerback position? Excuse me.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know much about the corners, to be honest with you. Yeah, they were both kind of ranked high, so I'm sure something in the visit, because obviously the Panthers and Broncos, they've been meeting with these players, just like NFL teams do that all the time in the draft. They obviously meet with all their prospects, who they might draft. So I'm sure there was something that happened, whether something they saw on film or there's something they saw at the combine, something that they just felt was right. Maybe talking to Horn or vice versa, talking to Surtain, their agent. I mean, there could be a whole handful of stuff. So I don't think there's anything specifically that we'll know until the results show on the field.
All right, really quickly here, Greg. And speaking of Joe Horn, and I teased before the break that which quarterback now, which kind of veteran quarterback will have a short leash to begin this season, Greg, and maybe we'll go over under, since there's 17 games starting this season, maybe we'll go over under 6 games. But I want to get into Horn because he was drafted right around the same time that everyone was in. Joe Horn, his dad, the former Saints wide receiver, was kind of disappointed at,
get out my cell phone.
Yeah.
Get out my cell phone as my celebration.
Well, not only that, Greg, but he was disappointed that the lack of coverage of his son was on ESPN because they were talking about the Aaron Rodgers saga that has now overwhelmed and overtaken not only the sports world, Greg, but the football world. And I want to get your opinion on this really quickly because this is interesting because, like you mentioned, unless the drafting of Patrick Surtain here in Denver somehow leads to the acquisition of Aaron Rodgers. And I was about to mention, too, in the first segment, Greg, that if the Packers were to trade him today or anytime before June 1st, it would be a $32 million hit against their cap. If they wait till after June 1st, Greg, it's only $7 million. So we're going to have to wait another month because it is May 2nd. So we're going to have to wait another month for this, this kind of saga to be over, if it will be over. And then Aaron Rodgers comes out yesterday or the day before. He was enjoying the Kentucky Derby yesterday, but he said, unless the GM gets fired, I'm not playing for the Green Bay Packers. So more details come out. So I guess if the GM gets fired, he'll stay. I don't know. If he doesn't get fired, maybe he gets traded. But what is your kind of percentage on not only Aaron Rodgers getting traded, but him somehow ending up on the Denver Broncos?
Oh, man. I feel like it's 2012 over again. With Peyton Manning coming to Denver, it definitely feels like that because I think a lot of Bronco fans were skeptical in 2012. They're like, no way we're going to get Manning. There's no way he's going to come here. It's like, it's like a dream come true. So I kind of feel that way with Aaron Rodgers of like, man, it'd be awesome. But it's like, no, there's no way he'd come here. But at the same time, yeah, who knows, man? Because in the NFL, there's owners and have a lot more leverage than they do in like the league, like the NBA, for example. So I think Aaron Rodgers isn't as likely to leave, especially given if you look at the Packers team, they're still a contender. They made it to the NFC Championship game last year. It's not like they're a bad team. Obviously, you take Rodgers off the team. I heard something the other day, Mike, that with Rodgers off the team, they're minus 9 points. So you go into week 1 against the Bears, for example, I think they're like a 6-point favorite currently or a 3-point favorite. And then you take them off and they're a 6-point underdog, which is really funny. Justin Fields is a 6-point favorite over, Jordan Love, even though he's not ready. But if Aaron Rodgers gets traded to the Broncos, who are we going to give up? And do we have enough to give up? And will they be willing to do it? Like, it'd have to require at least 1 or 2 first-round picks, probably Locke or Bridgewater. I don't know whichever one the Packers would want more, and probably Surtain. Maybe, would you throw in like a Von Miller there if they really wanted someone like Von Miller? I don't know if he's too old or what, but.
Well, and the discussions before even the draft.
Jerry Jeudy, too, I think was an option, too. Sorry.
I'll ask you, put on your GM hat, would you give up basically the farm for a 37-year-old quarterback? Because regardless of his age, I guess we'll compare Aaron Rodgers' age to Peyton Manning's injury in 2012. And, Peyton Manning was 35 when he signed with the Denver Broncos back in 2012. Aaron Rodgers now 37. And, would you, again, give up the farm, give up a couple first-round picks, a couple first-round picks like Surtain, like Jerry Jeudy? Would you give up that much for a 37-year-old quarterback? Because it's going to be a Peyton Manning type scenario anyway, 4 years at least.
Oh, 100%, Mike. If the trade's going to win you a championship, of course, or even get you to the Super Bowl. And where the Broncos are now, they're not even close to making it to the Super Bowl, even in the playoffs for that matter, in my opinion. Like, let's be honest. Right now in our division, we have the Broncos have the 4th worst quarterback. They probably are the 4th worst team potentially. If you look at the other teams who are improving, I think the Broncos could be better than the Raiders. But even the Raiders are young. They're up and coming. They got an established quarterback. The Chargers are only going to get better and better under Herbert. Obviously, no one's catching the Chiefs anytime soon unless you get out and get a guy like Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's a no-brainer. You also looked at some of the veteran quarterbacks that have really excelled in the NFL as of late. Who won the Super Bowl last year? A 41-year-old Tom Brady who's showing no signs of slowing down. Aaron Rodgers had one of his best years last year at age 36. So, you're telling me that he can't play for another 2 to 4 years? If he can play at that level with some of our talent around the ball, I think the Broncos should do it in a heartbeat, especially if it wins you a championship.
And that begs the question, Greg, as we get into these veteran quarterbacks and which one has sort of the shortest leash here after these rookie quarterbacks were drafted. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, he doesn't have to worry about anybody in front of him sitting. Neither does Zach Wilson up in New York. Those two guys are, I guess, the exception to this rule. They don't really have to – they don't have a timeline to kind of sit and wait behind anyone. And so you got to look at Trey Lance. We kind of touched on it at number 3, drafted with Jimmy G already on the roster. How long do you give the leash of Jimmy G, Greg? And we'll kind of go, more over under 6 games. So we'll start there in San Francisco with the number 3 pick. And a lot of people already kind of expect Trey Lance to be, again, a project. So how many weeks do you give Jimmy G until their next franchise quarterback comes into –
Sorry, I was losing you there for a little bit, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
No, you're good. I think it's going to be longer with Jimmy G just because I don't think Trey Lance, like we mentioned before, I don't think he's as ready prepared for the NFL to start right away. So I'm going to go over for sure. I'm going to go at least over half the season at least. I'll go like 10 games, to be honest with you. I'm going to go 10.
10 out of the now 17 games, remember. So you're going –
and I'm going over.
So you're going over 6. So, I don't know. Jimmy G, I'm going to go –
Unless he gets injured. That doesn't include injury. This is only over if he's healthy and struggling.
Yeah, so we can't really count on Jimmy G to either play up to expectations and or stay healthy. So maybe Trey Lance gets put in. Like you mentioned, 10 weeks. I'll give it 8, so I'll go the over as well. Moving on here, Greg. Obviously, the next quarterback that was taken as the Bears trade up from number 20 to number 11. So you have to look at the good old Red Rifle out there in Chicago. They signed Andy Dalton to a 1-year, $10 million questions. They trade up and take Justin Fields. How long do you give Andy Dalton in Chicago before Justin Fields inserts the starting lineup?
Are we doing 6 or 8, Mike?
6.
Oh, man. Dalton just looked like trash last year, and he's had plenty of years to prove himself. I'm going to go under.
Yeah, I told Matt when that happened, Greg, that not Jimmy G, but Andy Dalton is going to have a very short leash in Chicago. And it's funny because, after they signed Andy Dalton to that 1-year deal, they posted on Twitter, Instagram, their Facebook account, a picture of, Andy Dalton in a Bears uniform and said QB number 1. And that all changes because not only does Justin Fields wear number 1, but he's going to have a very, very short leash there in Chicago. And I don't want to say I feel bad for Andy Dalton, but this move is nothing like the move they made way back when they traded up to number 2 to take Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, it was actually I'm sure the Bears were kind of shocked that Fields landed that far. And they're like, well, if he's there, you might as well take him. He's probably better than what we have, or he's definitely got the potential, so why not? So I think they were more fortunate and actually surprised that he dropped.
Right, and let's do this last quarterback before the break, Greg, and that is number 15, and that was Mac Jones to New England, and you already have Cam Newton in that starting spot on the depth chart for the Patriots. Now, Cam Newton struggled last year. He had an okay year to begin the season, Greg, and then his little COVID spell hit, and he really wasn't the same after he came back from that. So how long? And Bill Belichick has already come out and said, Cam is our guy, right? I don't think he said right now, but most, the NFL nowadays, it's right now. So how long do you give Cam Newton over under 6 weeks?
Well, I'm getting over for sure. I think Cam Newton, this year too, it's his second full year with the Patriots. Obviously, first year with a new team can always be a struggle, especially with the COVID year with on the lack of practices and reps. So I've given Cam over 6, and I wouldn't be surprised if he started the whole season and then Matt starts later in his career.
So yeah, I want to give like Cam Newton right at 6 weeks. So I'm taking the push, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give Cam Newton right at 6 weeks. I don't. Bill Belichick has not a shiny new toy, but a thing that and do you think any of these teams really depends on where they are in the standings as well, like how well they're doing?
Yes, for New England for sure. I mean, Chicago. I think for all of them, it obviously does. I think the San Francisco one might be a little bit different because I think San Francisco is going to be competing anyway. There's so many talent around the ball, but I mean that's always a factor. It's always a factor.
All right, we will wrap up our NFL talk on the other side of the break, and we'll dive into some NBA action as the playoffs draw near, the playoff picture becoming a little bit more clear. Who's going to end up in those playoff play-in games at the bottom of the Eastern and Western Conference standings? We'll get into that next right here on the Wheelhouse Elevation 5280sports.com.
Away from your computer? No problem. Take Elevation 5280 Sports everywhere you go. iPhone and Android users, download the F-Stream or TuneIn apps, all free. Once you do that, plug in the custom link posted on elevation5280sports.com, then you're good to go on the go. Elevation5280sports.com. Careful, it's tough to breathe up here.
Ranger Station.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting in the forest. 1 second, I'm having a smoke. Next thing I know, I'm face-to-face with Smokey Bear.
Wow.
And he told me it only takes one spark to start a wildfire.
Did you know 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans?
I had no idea.
That's why Smokey's famous and you're not. Get your Smokey on. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Michael Spillane here for Anchor.fm, Elevation 5280's new podcasting hosting platform. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. You can't beat that. Next, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will then distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. You can then make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Once again, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Here in Colorado, we wear shorts in warm weather and in 5 feet of snow. Woo! We also talk sports year-round. Join Matt Mascarenas every Monday evening at 6 Mountain for your sports shorts.
But it means a hell of a lot to a football team with a brand new head coach who is a brand new head coach in his own right. A veteran coach, but brand new head coach who almost didn't even make the football game. Vic Fangio, the new coach of the Denver Broncos, almost didn't even make his first NFL coaching debut because he had kidney stones. And he was there standing on the sidelines coaching football.
Once again, join Matt Mascarenas for Sports Shorts every Monday evening at 6 Mountain, only on Elevation5280sports.com. Elevating Internet Sports Radio.
Well, I wonder what it's like to be the rainmaker.
And welcome back into the Wheelhouse here, Elevation 5280sports.com. Greg filling in for Matt this morning. Michael Spillane with you here on this Sunday morning. We're going to tie our conversation on the NFL here in a bow as we will move on to the NBA here in just a couple minutes. Want your opinion on a couple more first-round picks, Greg. Were you at all surprised at, and I know this was kind of a lot of people mock drafts and all that, but were you surprised that Atlanta is sticking with Matt Ryan for at least this season and they go tight end? Because I mean, I like Matt Ryan, but hasn't really, besides one Super Bowl appearance, obviously you gave up a 28-3 lead and Matt Ryan doesn't play defense. That's a whole nother conversation. But were you surprised that they are still mortgaging at least this season, maybe next season, on Matt Ryan?
No, I'm not. Like you said, Mike, Matt Ryan doesn't play defense. If you look at Matt Ryan's numbers, I've always been a fan of him as a quarterback. I mean, I bet majority of the teams in the NFL would take Matt Ryan as a Matt Ryan career as a quarterback in a heartbeat. And where he's at now, it's not like he's a bad quarterback. He's still above average quarterback. I think he's still in the top, and to me, he's probably still top 15 quarterback in the league. You have the weapons around him, and then you have a guy like Kyle Pitts available. You might as well take him. I mean, especially with the NFL being such a pass-heavy league and tight ends being utilized a lot more, kind of like hybrid wide receivers. Kyle Pitts could be like the next Travis Kelce or the next Rob Gronkowski. So he's definitely got that potential, and you know what you have with Matt Ryan. Obviously, rookie quarterbacks, like I said before, my great quarterbacks always come with a risk because you don't know what they're going to be. So, and it's not like quarterbacks won't be available after Matt Ryan hangs it up. You know, whether it's a year, 2 years, or 3 years, I'm sure there's going to be, whether it's some free agents out there or, you know, a sleeper in the draft. So, and if they don't win, it's one of those things like, you know, if the Falcons have a bad year again, they might have a high pick and could pick one of the top quarterbacks in the upcoming drafts. So,
yeah, I was just like, when we were doing our draft show on Thursday night, Greg, I was just like, that would be pretty funny if Atlanta just said, screw everyone behind us and take a quarterback to, again, if you draft a quarterback, if you're Atlanta, where they are in the draft, Greg, that person is probably going to sit anyway behind Matt Ryan for at least another year. So, and I think he would be in the Atlanta Falcons would be in the same position as you brought up earlier, Kansas City was when they drafted Pat Mahomes, a good person to sit and learn behind, and then maybe you move on from Matt Ryan. After,
or even like an Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre thing too.
Yeah, there you go. How about this stat? Did you see this stat? No Green Bay quarterback has ever played past 16 seasons in Green Bay. Bart Starr, 16 seasons. Brett Favre, 16 seasons. And Aaron Rodgers just played his 16th season in Green Bay. And no MVP has ever been traded after winning MVP. And we just got a text message from Aaron Rodgers now that we're talking about him, Greg. He's not happy. So there you go. Greg, moving on to the association on the hardwood here. As well, locally here, Denver has moved into third place in the Western Conference standings, a half game over the LA Clippers, who they beat last night. Utah and Phoenix, Greg. I don't know if those are two surprising teams that sit atop the Western Conference, but they have both clinched a playoff spot. And the other two teams atop the Eastern Conference, Brooklyn and Philadelphia, have also clinched a playoff spot in their respective conferences. This is interesting because if you're the 6 through 10 seeds now in both conferences, obviously you have to you have a play-in game to see even who makes the
7 through 10.
Is it 7 through 10? I thought it was 6 through 10.
7 plays 8 and 9 plays 10.
Well, there you go. So first question, do you like this play-in little scenario nowadays? Do you think they should keep it from now on? And looking at the standings now, the Lakers have fallen all the way to that 6th seed. You have Portland, Memphis, and then you have Golden State, San Antonio, who would also be involved in that little playoff tournament. Do you like this little play-in scenario?
I don't know, man. I guess for a fan who just, wants everyone to have a chance of getting a trophy, sure, in this day and age. But I tell you, man, it's like, with 10 teams making the playoffs, you're going to get some really trash team that doesn't even belong in the playoffs. So I can see why they did it, because it's going to attract, oh, excuse me, my phone just dropped. It's going to attract a lot of the youth who follow the NBA right now, who are like, yeah, man, did you see like the New Jersey, or not New Jersey, the New York Knicks are actually doing well, but some trash team that's been horrible for a while, like the Charlotte Hornets, could potentially get in with 10 games under 500. It just doesn't make sense in that realm, but I get the excitement because it gives teams opportunity, but then they're just going to be crushed the next round. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of it, but I can see why it's appealing. It's definitely a lot different than it, because the playoffs are supposed to be something that's like hard to it should be hard to earn, like Major League Baseball. It's what makes baseball great in that it's like you making the playoffs, you're an elite team. And NBA, you make the playoffs, okay, so you're just as good as half the league. Congratulations, you won a trophy.
Well, yeah, it's kind of that orange slices Capri Sun type scenario.
Snow cones after the game. Oh, we all get snow cones.
Yeah, we all got participation ribbons.
Yeah.
So as it stands right now, Miami would play Washington and Charlotte.
That's right. The Wizards. The Wizards.
Hey, Wizards have come on of late.
Yeah.
But Charlotte, to their defense, Greg, they're only one game below 500. They are 31-32. And also in their defense,
Washington's 6 games under 500, Mike.
Washington
games under 500.
Washington is, yeah. And Indiana 3 games behind. So Charlotte would play Indiana. Miami would play Washington. So like you said, it's not really fair to at least Miami, who, again, this is the Eastern Conference. So you're going to have 2-3 teams make the playoffs anyway with a losing record. But Miami sits there at 34-30, and they would play Washington, like we mentioned, 29.
No, Miami would play Charlotte. The 7 plays the 8, and the 9 plays the 10.
So Miami would play Charlotte. So, yeah, that's still kind of, I don't know. That's weird. I don't like this play-in scenario. I like the 1 plays 8 and so on and so forth. But now we have it all changed up. And obviously I was confused to begin with as you corrected me there. So I don't even know what's going on. So then the Portland Trailblazers in the Western Conference would play the Memphis Grizzlies, and Golden State would play San Antonio.
And the winner of the 9-10 plays the 1, and the winner of the 7-8 plays the 2.
So it would be what did you just say? 9-10 plays 2?
No, the winner of 9-10 becomes the 8 seed. The winner of the 7-8 becomes the 7 seed.
All right, so San Antonio and/or Golden State would play Utah, and Portland and/or Memphis would play Phoenix. Yep. And, of course, as it sets up right now, the Denver Nuggets would play the LA Lakers anyway.
Oof. Which I really am hoping the Lakers can somehow jump the Mavericks, because the Nuggets, I would much rather see them play the Lakers than I would the Mavericks, especially if the Lakers get healthy. And that's why it's so funky in the NBA right now, because you have teams like the Lakers. LeBron's been out almost, entire second half of the season. And then you have the Clippers have been battling injuries. Like Kawhi Leonard's been out. And, those are 2 teams when healthy could be the best 2 teams in the conference. And instead you have teams like Utah and Phoenix, who I like, who are very well coached. Obviously, let's just say for a sec, Mike, Chris Paul, probably the most underrated player in the NBA.
Yeah, and he's getting a lot of MVP consideration. Also, obviously, a lot of people obviously vying for Nikola Jokic here in Denver.
Well, I think Jokic should get it, but
to win MVP. The odds-on favorites right now in the Western Conference. It's weird that Utah is so far ahead. Even Greg, when Karl Malone noticed that Utah was so far ahead of the standings, he sent us a picture. And he's confused. I mean, he's wondering how Utah is so far ahead of the standings. And we lost. There you go, Gordon. We lost your picture there for a quick second. Do you believe in Utah? Do you think Utah can make a strong run at this?
I actually believe in them probably more than the Suns, because they've been in the playoffs the last couple of years, and they've had that same core that's been playing together for a while. I think Quinn Snyder's one heck of a coach. I think very underrated coach. I just like the way the team that plays together. They have balance. They have. I think Donovan Mitchell is a superstar in my opinion. I know he doesn't get all the public press as much as a lot of. It's similar to Jokic. Like Jokic and Mitchell, you don't hear about. Obviously, I think Jokic is better. But you got such a balanced team there. I think Gobert is one of the more underrated big men. I like Conley's leadership. I love that team, man. I think Utah could definitely make a deep run. I mean, it's hard to say because in the West, it's so tough from top to bottom that any team could make a run.
So that leads me to this question before we hit our last timeout, Greg. Is Brooklyn are they just going to run through the Eastern Conference? Is that set in stone?
I mean, they should. It would be interesting to see if Philadelphia's healthy. I like Embiid's matchup against Brooklyn, and I think he'd be a huge X factor. I like the way the Celtics, if they're healthy with Brad Stevens as a coach, I think they could push him to the limit. But yes, Brooklyn is definitely the head-on favorite.
All right, we're going to hit our last timeout. We'll wrap up our NBA conversation on the other side. We'll look at the NHL playoff picture as that comes a little bit more clear as well. And we'll end the show, Greg, looking into some Major League Baseball as well right here on the Wheelhouse Elevation 5280sports.com.
NFL Analysis Network is your one-stop source for coverage of all 32 teams. We provide in-depth analysis, news, and opinions about all things football. Since you're online anyway, check out NFLanalysis.net, Elevation 5280 Sports' exclusive new teammate on the gridiron.
Wow, that's a lot of books. Little one at home?
Yeah.
Let's see. Child-proofing your home, child-proofing your yard, child-proofing your in-laws' home and yard.
Of all the things you can read to keep your child safe, the most important is attached to their car seat. Read the instruction manual and use the latch system. It makes it easier to be sure your child's car seat is installed correctly. Learn more at safercar.gov. Anchor, tether, latch. The next generation of child safety. A message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Max Muscle Sports Nutrition for weight loss, weight gain, and healthy lifestyles. You can stop by any of our 13 store locations, and we also have 6 more under development and open territories available for franchising. For store locations and franchising opportunities, visit maxmusclecolorado.com. Mention this ad and receive a free sample of any of our Max Muscle Sports Nutrition products and receive $20 off your next purchase of $50 or more. Offer valid for in-store only. Limit 1 per customer. Cannot be combined with other offers. Not redeemable for cash.
Missed anything during the week from our live shows? Maybe a hot take or hilarious exchange? A groundbreaking opinion or money-making prediction?
The BLL is, I'm pretty sure, going to eliminate the MLL very shortly. If not this season, probably next season.
Work on getting another receiver right now. Yeah, another offensive lineman.
Joker was totally out the picture because when he's out there, he's like a sack of potatoes.
No worries, we've got you covered. Head on over to elevation5280sports.com and click on the shows tab or to Mixcloud and search Elevation 5280 Sports, and all of our podcasts are right there at your fingertips.
For those listeners who didn't feel that, we just had another one, baby.
Elevation5280sports.com. Careful, it's tough to breathe up here. This segment on Elevation 5280 Sports is brought to you by the NFL Analysis Network, your one-stop source for all 32 teams.
And welcome back into the Wheelhouse here, Elevation5280sports.com. Greg sitting in for Matt. Michael with you here on this Sunday morning as we're going to wrap up our conversation with a text from one of our normal texters, Greg. Golden Glenn, guys, besides Joker here in Denver, as he should be the odds-on favorite to win MVP. If you had to exclude him from the conversation, who would be your MVP?
Well, obviously, yes, Jokic. I'm wearing my Jokic jersey underneath, by the way. Should have pulled it out. Wasn't thinking. So thank you, Glenn from Golden, you said?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's a tough question. I mean, I love the way Chris Paul has been playing with the team, but you can't put him at 2. I mean, Embiid is he's injured a lot, so it's hard to put Embiid up there
Shaq
too.
About that.
What's that?
You said Shaq doesn't care that he missed half the season.
I know. Honestly, as much as I dislike him, Kyrie Irving has really stepped up his game this year, especially especially with Durant and Harden being out a lot.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny you bring up Kyrie Irving because James Harden's name has always been tied to the MVP conversation as well. And I guess you got to ask yourself, if you remove Embiid, if you remove Chris Paul.
I mean, you could say Giannis. Giannis is honestly one of the best players, but
I was going to say, if you remove Giannis, if you remove Chris Paul, if you remove Jokic, if you remove all these MVP candidates from their teams, would their teams still succeed? Obviously, Embiid missed a lot of time, and Philadelphia is still number 2 in the East.
Exactly. That's my whole argument with that.
The thing Giannis has going for him too is, like you said, Greg, he's already reigning 2-time MVP, and he hasn't missed time. So you got to give him credit for being durable. You got to give Jokic credit for being durable. You got to give Chris Paul I don't want to knock his age, but at his age, if you take Chris Paul off Phoenix, would they be the number 2 seed in the West?
I don't think they'd be number 2, but you got to remember last year in the bubble they heated up without Chris Paul. So I think
pun intended.
Yeah. They sunned up. No, the Suns, I think the Suns were up and coming, especially last year in the bubble. So I think they still have been a good team. But if you take Giannis and Jokic off, if you take Jokic off the Nuggets and Giannis off the Bucks, both those teams would be lucky to even make the playoffs.
But wouldn't Giannis's brother take his place and be the exact same?
You got jokes. You got jokes.
I take your laughter as, and we got this too when I just said that. So yeah, I mean, you got to, I guess, obviously at the beginning of this season, heading into the trade deadline or the All-Star break, I should say, is what we draw the line at first half, second half of seasons. LeBron was even in that conversation. You take LeBron off the Lakers, look how far they fell, Greg.
Yeah. I mean,
LeBron, they've still kind of continued to fall.
Exactly. I think with another player that he's got to be in the conversation is Luka as well.
Yeah, you look at Dallas. I think a month ago at this time, Greg, as like he's mentioned, Dallas sits now at the 5 seed. At the beginning of May, Greg, or excuse me, the beginning of March. What are we in? May, at the beginning of April, Dallas was on the outside looking in, Greg. They were the number 10 seed at the beginning of April. It is now the beginning of May, and they have moved up to the 5th seed.
Yeah.
So they have made a huge jump. They've overclimbed, obviously, Memphis, Portland, Golden State, Lakers, and now, like you mentioned, as if the playoffs were to start right now, they would be playing the LA Clippers. Do you think?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think that this would come in a scenario where do you see anything, because Dallas and Lakers have the same record, and Dallas has a little bit of advantage in the tiebreakers, but do you see any way that the Lakers can overclimb Dallas?
I mean, they obviously can, especially if Davis stays healthy. It also depends on who they're playing. I haven't looked at each of their schedule, but you have to look at the teams they're playing. So I think there's a chance there. As a Denver fan, I definitely hoping the Nuggets match up with Dallas rather than a healthy Laker team with LeBron back. Another player that also could be considered for MVP, I'm obviously not going to get it, but needs to be considered in the voting, maybe like top 10, is Julius Randle in New York, who's really lifted that team, or Trae Young in Atlanta, two teams that have really made a climb this year.
And don't forget, right, when New York retraded for Derrick Rose as well, they started playing a whole heck of a lot better, and he reunites with his old buddy Thibodeau out there in New York. He could be
coach of the year right there, actually.
Greg, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the next 8 games for the LA Lakers are as follows. They play Toronto tonight, Denver tomorrow, Clippers, Portland, Phoenix, Knicks, Houston, Indiana. So that is their next 8 games.
There are 3 lock wins: Houston, Indiana, and Toronto tonight. The other teams could easily be losses.
So there are the next 8 games for the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm going to pull up Dallas' schedule here because you kind of touched on it earlier. You kind of want the LA Lakers to kind of leapfrog the Dallas Mavericks. The next 8 games for the Mavericks, Greg, and this is kind of an easy one too, kind of: Sacramento, Miami, Brooklyn, Cleveland twice, Memphis, New Orleans, Toronto.
Ooh, man, I'm giving the edge to Dallas. As much as I hate to say it, I mean, I mean, you got 4 or 5 locked wins almost there for Dallas between 2 in Cleveland. I think you mentioned Toronto. Uh, it's just an easier schedule, I think, for Dallas than it is for the Lakers, but who knows?
There you go. As really quickly here, Greg, as we have a couple of minutes left, we'll move on to the NHL standings. Obviously, here in Colorado, we are obviously keeping close tabs on the Colorado Avalanche, as you know, they were on a very, very hot streak heading into the month of May. What was going to be heading into the month of May, they had an 8-day layoff due to COVID, and they came back from that 8-day layoff. They got a big win against against Minnesota, and then they lost a couple straight, and they just couldn't get right. Grubauer was still on the COVID list. Now, 2 games ago, they get everyone back. Grubauer's first game back, they shut out San Jose 3-0. Yesterday, they beat San Jose 4-3. So you got to be wondering, man, was really Grubauer the missing piece to this as we look into the Western Conference, or excuse me, the West Division? There are no conferences this season.
Right.
Just 4 divisions. Vegas still right there. They are on Greg, their last 10 games, they've only lost 1. Colorado, to their credit, their last 10 games, they're 7-3. Minnesota's climbing. In their last 10, they're 8-1-1. And then St. Louis is right on the border of right on the cusp of making it. I mean, this Avs team was on a chase for a President's Trophy. And like we saw, I guess I'm going to tie this back to 2007, Greg, when the Rockies swept their way to the World Series. Those layoffs, man, although it's a good break, get everyone back and healthy, I mean, it really stunts your momentum.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of you need routine, right? You need to get back, especially when a sport where you're constantly moving. You need to get out there and get the feeling back, and get the chemistry back between being on the ice together, playing together, and so obviously, yeah. But it's good that it's doing it now, and the layoff didn't happen like right before the playoffs. So obviously, we'll see what happens in the next half month or so. But you sitting where we're at today, you definitely have to like the Avalanche's chances at a deep run. Obviously, the NHL playoffs. What's so fun about the NHL playoffs is it's definitely there's a lot of parity, right? There's never like a clear cut, oh, that team's going to win it all, like for sure, right? Because there's always surprises. The games come down the wire. I feel like every year there's always like a really low seed that like pushes a high seed to the limit or even beats them. You look at Tampa Bay 2 years ago. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets knocked out. Yeah, that's what it was. They knocked off the Lightning, right? If I remember correctly. So there was always surprises. So nothing's guaranteed. It's going to be a lot of fun, but you got to give the Avs maybe the best shot as anybody else. I mean, it's not like anyone else is like extremely right in front of them or ahead of them, should I say.
Well, it's funny you bring up the parity, because Tampa Bay, who did win the Stanley Cup last season in the bubble, they are right now 3rd place in the Central. I don't know why they're in the Central. All these Eastern teams are in the Central Division: Carolina, Florida, and Tampa Bay. And you look at Carolina and Florida. I mean, they came out of nowhere this season as they lead the Central Division. And you look at the North Division, which is all Canadian teams, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's got to get really old. You just play everyone in Canada. Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Montreal lead that North Division. And we look at the West. We just mentioned Vegas, Avs, Minnesota. And then in the East, you have Pittsburgh, Washington, and the Islanders. I mean, the Islanders have been building for years, Greg. You saw kind of the cusp of it last season in the bubble, as the Islanders almost made a deep playoff run. They were actually my pick to come out of the Eastern Conference, fell a little bit short. But there they are, right back in the thick of things. And now if you're the Avs, Greg, you kind of have to look in the rearview mirror after dropping a couple straight, because Minnesota's only 2 points behind you. But you can't do that because you look ahead and Vegas is only 4 points ahead of you.
Yeah. You just got to take care of business, man. That's one thing that I respect about hockey players, man. They go out there and they just compete. They don't worry about who's trying to catch them and who's ahead. So it's always fun. The NHL playoffs is definitely are definitely one of the better playoff tournaments because you never know what could happen.
All right, Greg, really quickly before we get on out of here, will we see, what is your percentage? We see your boy back in the NFL, and this is who I'm talking about.
Tim Tebow.
There you
go. I knew it was going to. 5%.
5%. Now, what do you make of this? I just want your opinion on it. Obviously, reached out to his old college coach, Urban Meyer, down there, in Jacksonville. They draft Trevor Lawrence. I mean, if he would, I told, because this kind of, leaked into our discussion on draft night, Greg, why didn't he want to make this switch 10 years ago? He'd probably still be in the NFL. He could have been Taysom Hill before Taysom Hill was Taysom Hill. And I just said Taysom Hill way too many times in one sentence.
Possibly. I don't know, man. I think there's too much publicity with his name. Nothing of his fault. It's just like, do you really want that much media attention on your team as I can distract from other things? And he's been out of the league so long. It's just like, I mean, cool. It's a cool story, but I think it's more of a headline. It's more of a headliner to grab people's attention. I don't think there's anything more.
Do you think his AA baseball money ran out or something?
Well, I think his SEC network money is going to be just fine.
I was going to say, yeah, he's got to be making some good
man.
money. I was going to say he's got to be making some good money in the SEC network.
This is definitely a publicity stunt.
Well, maybe. Maybe we'll see him. Maybe we'll see him someday back in. I give it a low percentage too. I give it 0%.
There you go.
All right, Greg, thank you for filling in on this Sunday morning. Thank everyone for listening, watching, however you tuned in on here on Elevation5280sports.com. Don't forget Sports Shorts with Matt Mascarenas and Barbershop Sports Talk with Daryl Lane comes your way tomorrow evening starting at 6 o'clock Mountain Time right here on Elevation5280sports.com. For Greg Johnson, I am Michael Spillane. We will see you next time.